Chapter 3. Abortion, a polarizing issue. 3.1 Abortion Rights, a historical overview. Abortion has been a deeply divisive subject in the United States, resonating with strong moral, ethical, legal, and political implications. The trajectory of abortion rights and laws in the U.S. reflects a history of evolving social norms, legal standards, and medical practices. Abortion as a practice has been present throughout human history, but its legal and social acceptance has varied greatly by time and culture. In the United States, the journey of abortion rights is markedly complex and has followed a nonlinear path. In the early years of America's history, abortion was a relatively common procedure and not regarded as illegal or unethical. Colonial America inherited the British common law, which allowed abortion before the point of quickening, the first movement of the fetus felt by the pregnant woman, which typically occurs around 16 to 20 weeks of gestation. During this period, abortion was considered a private matter. The majority of the procedures were carried out with natural remedies or by midwives and healers, with many individuals considering the decision to terminate a pregnancy as a part of normal family life. The shift in America's attitude towards abortion began to occur in the 19th century. The American Medical Association, founded in 1847, started to campaign against abortion. The motivations behind this were a mix of an attempt to assert the medical profession's authority over midwives and concern about the dangers of the procedures given the rudimentary medical techniques of that era. By the 1880s, most states had anti-abortion laws, except in cases where the woman's life was deemed to be in danger. Additionally, societal changes, including views on the role of women and the concept of the nuclear family, also influenced the shift toward more restrictive abortion laws. The 20th century brought technological advances in medicine that made abortion procedures much safer, but also saw the persistent tightening of abortion restrictions in many jurisdictions. By the 1950s and 1960s, however, public sentiment began to change due in part to tragic stories of women harmed by illegal and unsafe abortions. Activists began to call for the reform of abortion laws, culminating in significant legislative and judicial changes. The landmark case of Roe v. Wade in 1973 became the legal bedrock for abortion rights in the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a 7-2 decision, ruled that the Constitution protects a woman's right to an abortion prior to the viability of the fetus, which it placed at around 24 weeks of gestation. The ruling asserted that states could not ban abortion, though they could impose certain regulations to protect women's health and fetal viability. This decision galvanized both supporters and opponents of abortion rights, setting the stage for decades of political activism, litigation, and legislative battles. Following Roe v. Wade, the federal government and individual states crafted numerous laws and regulations regarding abortion. Some of these laws were designed to protect women's health and safety, while others were attempts to restrict access to abortion services. For example, the Hyde Amendment of 1976 prohibited the use of federal funds for abortions except in cases of rape, incest, or when the mother's life is in danger, disproportionately affecting low-income women who rely on government-funded health care. During the 1980s and 1990s, the vision of abortion rights experienced notable challenges and support. With the presidency of Ronald Reagan and the successive conservative administrations, there was a notable shift towards policies that favored more restrictions on abortion. The Supreme Court upheld the Hyde Amendment and allowed states to place restrictions on abortion services as long as they did not pose an undue burden on a woman seeking to terminate her pregnancy. However, despite such restrictions, a vocal and effective pro-choice movement worked to combat limitations on abortion access, generating a significant counterbalance to the anti-abortion efforts. Abortion providers like Planned Parenthood played a critical role, offering medical services and advocating for the right to choose. Simultaneously, advancements in medical technology, such as the development of the abortion pill, mifepristone, approved by the FDA in 2000, provided women with more options for terminating a pregnancy, particularly in the early stages. The abortion debate, has remained at the forefront of American political discourse in the 21st century. Polarization on the issue has intensified with the alignment of conservative politicians and ideologies with the anti-abortion movement, making abortion rights a centerpiece in political campaigns. The framing of abortion as a defining moral issue rather than a personal medical decision has contributed significantly to this polarization. The Supreme Court decision in 2003 to uphold a federal ban on a specific abortion procedure, often termed as partial birth abortion, signaled the court's willingness to approve tighter restrictions on certain types of abortion procedures. This decision highlighted the incremental approach anti-abortion advocates have taken, introducing legislation aimed at slowly eroding the foundation of Roe v. Wade. These efforts culminated in various states enacting draconian laws that severely limited or aimed to ban abortions outright, often challenged by pro-choice organizations. In response to these restrictive laws, reproductive rights advocates have continued to assert that access to safe and legal abortion is integral to the health, autonomy, and social and economic equality of women. They argue that any infringement on the ability to make decisions about one's body diminishes an individual's rights and freedoms. Abortion rights activists have fought these restrictive laws in courts and advocated for laws that secure and expand access to reproductive health services. In the last few years, the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court has raised the possibility of a significant rollback or even an overturning of Roe v. Wade. Appointments of justices with known conservative views on abortion have led to concerns that nearly 5 decades of federally protected abortion rights could be in jeopardy. State legislatures with anti-abortion majorities have primed new statutes that could provide the legal cases that might prompt the Supreme Court to revisit and potentially dismantle the precedents set by Roe v. Wade. As the nation continues to confront the contentious issue of abortion, the history of abortion rights reflects an ongoing struggle between shifting public opinion, legal interpretation, medical developments, and political ideologies. Abortion is a deeply rooted societal issue that exemplifies the complex interplay of individual rights, morality, and state interest, with its historical evolution guiding the current debates and policies. The future of abortion rights will likely be shaped by further legal challenges, ongoing technological advancements, and the changing dynamics of political might within the American landscape. 3.2 Roe v. Wade overturned, implications and reactions. The overturning of Roe v. Wade marks a significant turning point in the history of abortion rights in the United States. This landmark decision had stood for nearly 50 years as a protective measure for the reproductive rights of women. However, the reversal does not simply denote an alteration of legal precedents, it has larger implications for the socio-political landscape of the nation. The decision has galvanized individuals and groups on both sides of the abortion debate, leading to a pronounced schism between pro-choice and pro-life contingents. It represents a seismic shift in the balance of state power versus federal authority over reproductive rights, and has ignited discussions on the sanctity of precedent, known as stare decisis, in the American legal system. From the perspective of legal structure, the reversal of Roe v. Wade has transferred the authority to regulate abortion to the individual states. This transfer has the immediate consequence of creating a patchwork of laws that vary dramatically between different regions. Some states had so-called trigger laws in place, laws designed to take effect automatically upon Roe's reversal, banning or heavily restricting abortion immediately. Others have moved to enshrine abortion rights into their state constitutions or have passed laws securing these rights legislatively. The geographic disparity in access to abortion services has therefore increased, with significant implications for women's health and socioeconomic status, especially impacting those who cannot afford to travel to secure these services. The immediate public reaction to the overturning has been a profound polarization within the United States. Protests, both in favor of the decision and against it, erupted across numerous cities. Advocates for women's reproductive rights perceived the overturn as a direct attack on the autonomy of women over their own bodies, while those in opposition to abortion viewed the decision as a long overdue correction, aligning the law with their moral convictions. Social media platforms have become battlegrounds for ideological debates, with rhetoric intensifying from both sides. The implications for healthcare and medical professionals are particularly acute. Doctors and other healthcare providers in states where abortion is now illegal or heavily regulated must navigate a complex legal landscape. They face the potential for legal consequences should they provide services deemed unlawful by state statutes, and therapeutic decisions that once fell within the realm of professional discretion now carry the risk of criminal liability. The decision has also bred confusion. In some ambiguous cases, providers may be unsure about when the law permits them to intervene to save a woman's life or health. The effect on the judicial landscape extends beyond abortion. Since Roe was one of the foundational cases that established a right to privacy, its reversal raises questions about other rights previously thought to be protected under this legal doctrine. Other cases, such as Griswold v. Connecticut and Obergefell v. Hodges, which legalized contraception and same-sex marriage respectively, may now face increased scrutiny and potential challenges. The concern among advocates is that these rights, too, could be subject to a rollback if the basis upon which they were decided is no longer recognized. On the political front, the overturning of Roe v. Wade has acted as a catalyst for political mobilization. Candidates at both the federal and state levels have used the issue to rally their voter base. For Democrats and left-leaning independents, preserving reproductive rights has become an urgent cause, with some calling for federal legislation to codify the right to abortion. For Republicans and right-leaning independents, the decision represents a fulfillment of long-standing political promises and bolsters the narrative of judicial activism. Internationally, the reversal of Roe v. Wade has tarnished the reputation of the United States as a leader in human rights advocacy. Many foreign commentators and governments have expressed concern about the rollback of women's rights, interpreting it as a regressive move. This international criticism has influenced the global discourse on reproductive rights, with the United States often being cited as a case study in the volatility of civil liberties formerly taken for granted. Economically, the decision may have wide-reaching effects due to its impact on the workforce. Women who cannot access abortion may face unplanned economic burdens associated with parenting or healthcare costs related to pregnancy. This impact could have a ripple effect on economic equality and workforce participation, as well as on public assistance programs that might see increased demand. On the other side, some economists suggest that more births might boost population growth and potentially stimulate certain sectors of the economy. In academia, the reverberations of Roe's reversal have intensified debates over constitutional interpretation and the philosophy of law. Some scholars argue that the Supreme Court's decision underscores the fragility of rights not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution, while others debate the appropriateness of the court's role in shaping social policy. Law schools and political science departments across the nation are reassessing their curricula to reflect this major shift in jurisprudence. The broader cultural impact of the decision cannot be overstated. It has re-energized cultural wars that many believed had subsided. In literature, film, and art, new works are emerging that address the themes of autonomy, bodily integrity, and the politicization of personal choices. The debate surrounding abortion rights has become a renewed cultural touchstone, reflecting deep societal divisions and personal convictions. Finally, the decision is having a defining effect on the conversation about the future of the Supreme Court itself. Criticism of the court's decision has fueled discussions about the possibility of court reform, including proposals to expand the number of justices or to introduce term limits. The reversal of Roe v. Wade has become emblematic of what many see as a politicized Supreme Court, bringing its legitimacy and the lifetime tenure of its justices into question. The subject of abortion has always been contentious, but the reversal of Roe v. Wade fundamentally alters the context in which these contentions will play out for generations to come. The event itself is a bellwether, signaling to activists, policymakers, jurists, and ordinary citizens that the tectonic plates of legal precedent and societal norms can shift, sometimes drastically. The full extent of these shifts will reveal itself in the years ahead, as the interconnected strands of law, politics, and culture continue to adapt to and be shaped by the reverberations of this landmark decision. 3.3 State Battles: The New Frontiers of Abortion Rights. Abortion rights in the United States are a focal point of heated debate and have seen a significant evolution, particularly at the state level. In recent years, the tension between state autonomy and federal oversight has escalated, leading to a patchwork of laws that offer divergent views on the legality, access, and restrictions surrounding abortion services. This pluralism in state legislation reflects the complex moral, ethical, religious, and political viewpoints surrounding the issue of abortion. In an environment of contested values and beliefs, individual states adopt positions that often challenge or reinforce the federal stance on abortion rights. The evolution of state legislation on abortion can be traced back to the landmark decision of Roe v. Wade in 1973. This pivotal Supreme Court ruling recognized a woman's constitutional right to privacy, extending to her decision to have an abortion. While Roe intended to set a national standard, it also expressly permitted states to regulate abortion procedures post-viability, as long as they made exceptions to preserve the life or health of the mother. This allowance for state regulation has since been the crux of the prolonged legal battles and legislative maneuvers on both sides of the abortion argument. In the aftermath of Roe, many states began erecting barriers to abortion access. These restrictions often took the form of mandatory waiting periods, targeted regulations of abortion providers, trap laws, parental consent or notification laws for minors, and bans on specific methods of abortion. Proponents of these regulations argue that states have a legitimate interest in protecting the potential life of the fetus, as well as ensuring the physical and emotional well-being of women seeking abortions. Critics, however, contend that such laws are thinly veiled attempts to limit women's access to abortion and undermine the protections granted by Roe. Apart from restricting access to abortion, some states have sought to expand abortion rights. They assert that despite the constitutional protection of abortion rights, practical access is uneven across the United States due to restrictive legislation by other states. Efforts to expand access often involve legislation that codifies the right to abortion, removes restrictions on insurance coverage for the procedure, and reduces unnecessary regulations that could shutter clinics. These state-level expansions are seen as safeguarding against potential federal rollbacks or Supreme Court decisions that could weaken national abortion protections. The stratification of abortion laws among the states became even more pronounced after the introduction of the concept of fetal personhood into state constitutions and statutes. Several states have passed amendments that recognize the rights of fetuses at various stages of development. This move has profound implications, potentially criminalizing abortion and complicating medical decisions in cases of fetal abnormalities or risks to the mother's health. Advocates for fetal personhood laws often argue from a moral and ethical standpoint, prioritizing the life and rights of the unborn child over the rights of the woman to terminate her pregnancy. In contrast, other states have vehemently opposed fetal personhood measures, warning of the risks such laws would pose to women's health and autonomy. Critics argue that fetal personhood laws fail to properly weigh the complex circumstances surrounding pregnancy, such as the socioeconomic factors, maternal health risks, and cases of rape and incest. The debate over fetal personhood illustrates the larger clash of values that underpins the abortion issue: individual liberty versus the protection of potential life. Another aspect of the state battles over abortion rights revolves around the accessibility of medical versus surgical abortion. Medical abortion, typically administered through a series of pills, offers an alternative to surgical procedures and has been hailed by reproductive rights advocates for its privacy and relative ease of access. As medical abortions become more prevalent, some states have passed laws to restrict their use, citing safety concerns and the need for medical oversight. Opponents of such restrictions argue that they are medically unfounded and pose unnecessary barriers, particularly for women in rural areas or with limited access to healthcare facilities. The advent of telemedicine and its application in abortion services has further complicated the state-level regulatory landscape. Several states have embraced telemedicine as a way to remotely prescribe and monitor medical abortions, an approach that could expand access to abortion care in underserved areas. Conversely, numerous states have enacted legislation banning the use of telemedicine for abortion, arguing that in-person evaluations are essential for patient safety. The disagreements over telemedicine underscore divergent beliefs about how healthcare should be regulated and who should have the authority to make those decisions. Judicial involvement in state abortion laws remains a contentious issue. Courts are often called upon to interpret the constitutionality of state abortion statutes, balancing the state's purported interests against the rights of individuals seeking abortions. Legal challenges to state laws frequently hinge on whether the restrictions place an undue burden on women seeking abortion, a standard set forth in Planned Parenthood v. Casey. As federal courts, including the Supreme Court, shape the legal principles governing abortion, they directly influence state legislatures' ability to craft laws around this sensitive topic. In the overall landscape of abortion rights, the role of public opinion cannot be ignored. State battles over abortion are often influenced by the prevailing societal attitudes toward the procedure. Surveys and polls regularly show that Americans are divided on the issue, with significant nuances in views on the legality and timing of abortion. Legislators at the state level, responsive to their constituents, may enact or resist abortion-related legislation in part based on the public sentiment in their region. This dynamic interplay between legislative action and public opinion creates a cycle of continuously evolving state policies on abortion. The variability of state laws on abortion has created stark regional disparities in access to abortion services. States with liberal abortion laws can become havens for those seeking services, while those with restrictive regimes compel individuals to travel across state lines or resort to unsafe methods to terminate a pregnancy. The resulting patchwork effect raises questions about equality of access to medical care and the fair application of reproductive rights across the country. The emergence of state battles as the new frontiers of abortion rights reflects a broader trend in American politics, where contentious issues are increasingly contested at the state level. As the federal government experiences gridlock and division, states emerge as the primary battlegrounds for social policy experimentation and reform. This process can lead to innovative solutions tailored to specific populations, but can also result in fragmented policies that highlight the ideological divisions within the country. The future trajectory of abortion rights in the United States seems inexorably tied to state-level legislation, subject to the changing tides of political power and public opinion. What remains constant in the discussion is the profound impact that these laws have on individuals and communities. As states chart their own course in the abortion debate, they shape not only the legal landscape, but also the lived experience of millions of Americans caught in the crossfire of this enduring social issue. 3.4 Moral, ethical, and religious dimensions of abortion. The topic of abortion is steeped in moral, ethical, and religious considerations that often result in a deeply polarized public discourse. The arguments surrounding abortion revolve around fundamental questions about the nature of human life, rights, and the duties of individuals and the state. Abortion raises profound ethical questions about the moral status of the embryo or fetus, the scope of women's rights, the responsibilities of parenthood, and the role of government in private matters. These questions are further complicated by varying religious beliefs that influence individuals' positions on the issue. Religions often provide comprehensive views on the sanctity of life, with many asserting a firm stance on when life begins. For example, the Roman Catholic Church teaches that life begins at conception and thus opposes abortion under virtually all circumstances. Many evangelical Christian denominations similarly hold that human life starts at conception and attribute full moral status to the embryo or fetus. In this view, abortion is often equated with the taking of innocent human life, which is morally impermissible. For adherents, these beliefs are not simply private matters, but are seen as universal moral truths that should be reflected in the laws of society. In contrast, other religious traditions offer different teachings on when life begins and the permissibility of abortion. For instance, in Judaism, there is no single authoritative stance on abortion, though in general Jewish law prioritizes the life and health of the mother over that of the fetus, particularly in early stages of pregnancy. Islam also has diverse interpretations, with some teachings allowing abortion within the first 120 days, while others are more restrictive. These religious perspectives shape the ethical frameworks within which followers make decisions about abortion, and they also influence broader societal debates on the issue. From a secular ethical perspective, debates on abortion often hinge on the concept of personhood and the rights that come with it. Philosophers and ethicists debate at what point in biological development a human embryo or fetus should be considered a person with rights, including the right to life. Some argue that personhood begins at conception, emphasizing the genetic uniqueness of the embryo. Others point to particular milestones in fetal development, such as the capacity to feel pain, viability outside the womb, or the emergence of cognitive characteristics typically associated with personhood, as the threshold. Complicating these discussions further is the issue of women's rights, particularly the right to bodily autonomy. Many advocates of abortion rights argue that a woman has the right to make decisions about her own body, including the right to terminate a pregnancy. They contend that forcing a woman to continue a pregnancy against her will is a violation of her personal liberty and is morally unjustifiable. This argument often intersects with discussions about the societal implications of child rearing, gender inequality, and the ability of women to participate fully in society. The contentious nature of these moral and ethical arguments is reflected in the legal and political arenas, where differing views impact the drafting, interpretation, and enforcement of laws. The role of the state in regulating or restricting abortion is a matter of constant debate. Some argue that the state has a moral duty to protect potential life and must therefore legislate against abortion. Conversely, others argue that the state should protect the rights of the pregnant woman and refrain from imposing one particular moral standpoint on individuals with diverse beliefs. Adding another layer to these debates are concerns about the consequences of restricted access to abortion services. Advocates for abortion rights argue that restrictions can lead to unsafe, unregulated abortions that jeopardize the health and even the lives of women. They highlight the importance of safe, legal access to reproductive health care as a public health issue. Conversely, opponents of abortion argue that the focus of public health efforts should be on protecting the unborn and promoting alternatives to abortion, such as adoption. The socioeconomic dimensions of abortion cannot be ignored. Disparities in access to healthcare, education, and economic opportunities often disproportionately affect a woman's decision about pregnancy. Women from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are more likely to seek an abortion and may be more significantly impacted by restrictions to abortion services. Discussions around the moral and ethical considerations of abortion frequently intersect with these socioeconomic factors, with advocates on differing sides of the issue pointing to the need for broader social reforms. Religious, moral, and ethical considerations also shape medical practice and the provision of abortion services. Healthcare providers often face dilemmas when personal beliefs conflict with professional responsibilities to patients. Medical ethics principles such as respect for autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice provide a framework for addressing these issues, but do not always offer clear-cut answers. As a result, healthcare providers must navigate their own moral compasses while adhering to professional standards and legal requirements. The debates over abortion touch upon fundamental questions about life and society that are not readily resolved. Technology, such as advanced prenatal imaging and genetic testing, complicates these debates by offering deeper insights into fetal development and posing new ethical challenges. Furthermore, the potential for new legislative and judicial rulings continues to shape the landscape of abortion rights and provoke public debate. Lastly, the emotional and psychological dimensions of abortion contribute to its complexity as a social issue. The personal stories of women who have faced the decision to have an abortion illuminate the struggles and nuances that statistics and abstract arguments often fail to convey. Social stigmatization, the burden of choice, and the long-lasting impact of abortion or its denial on individuals' lives underscore the deeply personal nature of this issue. The moral, ethical, and religious dimensions of abortion thus remain critical lenses through which society examines and re-examines its values, laws, and practices concerning this contentious issue. 3.5 Women's Health and Reproductive Rights. Abortion is at the forefront of the women's health and reproductive rights debate, a topic that embodies the clash between personal autonomy and societal ethics. At its core, the issue revolves around the legal and moral consideration of women's rights over their own bodies against the rights ascribed to a fetus. Throughout history, the notion of women having control over their reproductive decisions has been subject to fluctuating levels of acceptance, often influenced by prevailing cultural, religious, and political ideologies. In the modern United States, this contention has not waned but rather intensified, with differing views on the legality and accessibility of abortion services. The term reproductive rights encompasses a range of legal and medical issues, including the right to access contraceptives, abortion services, quality reproductive health care, and accurate information about these topics. These rights are predicated on the idea that individuals should have the power to make informed decisions about their reproductive health without interference from the government or other entities. Women's health advocates argue that to deny such rights directly infringes upon a woman's privacy, agency, and in some cases, her right to health and even life. The debate over abortion and women's health often invokes the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion nationwide. The ruling established the precedent that women have a constitutional right to privacy that encompasses the right to terminate a pregnancy. This decision, pivotal as it was, did not put an end to the abortion debate. Rather, it became a lightning rod for ongoing controversy. In the years since Roe v. Wade, numerous legislative efforts at both the state and federal levels have sought to restrict or protect abortion access, reflecting deep societal divides. One aspect of the debate centers on the issue of when life begins and the fetus's rights. Pro-life advocates hold the position that life starts at conception and that a fetus therefore possesses a right to life that must be protected. This perspective often cites moral, philosophical, and religious grounds to support laws that would restrict abortion access. Such restrictions can take many forms, including mandatory waiting periods, parental consent laws for minors, and bans on abortion after a certain point in pregnancy, often anchored to the disputed concept of fetal viability. On the other side of the debate, pro-choice supporters contend that a woman's right to decide whether to carry a pregnancy to term is fundamental to her bodily autonomy and gender equality. From this perspective, access to safe and legal abortion services is viewed as critical to women's physical and mental well-being. Advocates underscore the risks associated with pregnancy and childbirth, particularly for marginalized populations, as well as the potential economic, social, and psychological impacts of being forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term. Central to this debate is the question of who should have the authority to make decisions regarding abortion. Pro-choice advocates argue that such highly personal decisions should rest with the woman, ideally in consultation with her healthcare provider, not with politicians or judges. In arguing for the preservation of individual autonomy, these advocates stress the diversity of women's circumstances, highlighting that the reasons for seeking an abortion can range from health concerns to socioeconomic factors. The legal battles over abortion also often involve considerations of socioeconomic disparity. Critics of restrictive abortion laws argue that such measures disproportionately impact low-income individuals and women of color, who may lack the financial means or mobility to navigate legal hurdles or travel to areas with more accessible services. This can perpetuate a cycle of poverty and limit opportunities, as those who cannot obtain abortions may be less able to participate fully in the workforce or pursue education. Furthermore, the focus on abortion sometimes overshadows the broader context of reproductive rights, which includes the need for comprehensive sex education, affordable and accessible contraception, and adequate maternal health care. A holistic approach to reproductive rights requires addressing these interconnected facets to ensure that individuals have the means to manage their reproductive lives. Abortion is but one aspect of a larger tapestry of reproductive health, all of which are critical to women's autonomy and equality. The issue of abortion also raises questions about the role of medical professionals in reproductive health care. Medical providers often find themselves in a complex position, upholding their duty to care for their patients while navigating legal restrictions that may limit their ability to provide comprehensive health care. This has implications for the quality of care received by women, as well as for the ethical constraints that providers may face should they be required to act in ways that conflict with their professional judgment or patients' needs. Moreover, discussions around abortion and reproductive rights must consider the impact of technology and its potential to redefine the context of this debate. Advances in medical science have not only improved the safety and accessibility of abortion procedures, but have also sparked new ethical considerations. The availability of prenatal genetic testing, for instance, raises questions about discrimination and the selective termination of pregnancies based on genetic abnormalities, further complicating the moral landscape. The issue of reproductive rights and abortion will likely remain a contentious topic of public discourse. As society progresses, the debate's contours will continue to evolve, shaped by technological advancements, shifting demographics, cultural attitudes, and political dynamics. It is a debate that touches upon some of the most profound questions about life, identity, and the balancing of individual rights with communal values. The pursuit of common ground within this polarized landscape is challenging. It requires a thoughtful dialogue that respects differing viewpoints while remaining anchored to the core principles of human rights and personal dignity. As such, policies around women's health and reproductive rights will require careful consideration, balancing respect for diverse beliefs with the commitment to protect the health and autonomy of individuals. The discourse on this issue, both within the halls of government and among the public, speaks to the broader struggle to define the essence of freedom and responsibility in a pluralistic society. 3.6 Abortion in the political arena. Abortion stands as one of the most enduring and controversial topics within the political landscape of the United States. Its divisiveness has deep roots, stemming from multifaceted beliefs that encompass moral, ethical, religious, and individual rights perspectives. American politicians and legislatures have grappled with this issue, producing policies that have alternated between restrictive and permissive based on shifting political powers and social attitudes. The alignment of political parties on this issue is stark, with most Republican lawmakers historically advocating for restrictive abortion laws, citing moral and religious grounds, while most Democrats support abortion rights, emphasizing individual liberty and women's reproductive health. In the political realm, the debate over abortion often intersects with the discussion on the role of government and the interpretation of the Constitution, particularly the 14th Amendment, which notably encompasses the right to privacy. This has been interpreted by courts to include the right to make decisions about one's own body, including the right to terminate a pregnancy. The landmark decision in Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court in 1973 remains a focal point of conflict. It recognized a woman's constitutional right to an abortion and set up a framework for the legality of abortion that states were obliged to follow. However, it also allowed for state regulations, provided they did not impose an undue burden on women seeking abortions. The Supreme Court decision catalyzed an era of active legislation at both state and federal levels. States with legislatures inclined to limit abortion access began a steady promulgation of laws intended to test the limits of Roe v. Wade. On the opposite end of the spectrum, states sympathetic to abortion rights have sought to create protections and expand access, even if federal protections were to be curtailed. This legislative dance has filled the history of abortion in America with a patchwork of laws that vary significantly from state to state, leading to uneven access to abortion services for American women. Political campaigns frequently capitalize on the abortion issue to mobilize voters. For some voters, the candidate's stance on abortion is a litmus test for their support. As a result, candidates clearly articulate their position on this issue, knowing it is a determinant factor for a significant portion of the electorate. The prominence of abortion in political campaigns underscores its importance, but also prolongs the polarization, as middle ground positions are often overshadowed by the extremes on both sides of the issue. Lobbying efforts around abortion are intense and well-funded. Organizations such as Planned Parenthood on one side and the National Right to Life Committee, on the other, exercise significant political influence. These groups not only fundraise and campaign for supportive candidates, but also drive public debate and discourse regarding abortion. They seek to educate legislators and the public, propose legislation, and even initiate legal action in an effort to shift policy in their favor. The interplay between the judiciary and the legislature on abortion has also been significant. Judicial appointments, particularly to the Supreme Court, are scrutinized based on the appointed judge's perceived stance on abortion. Presidents understand the impact of these lifetime appointments on the longevity of their political agendas, which includes the potential to reverse or fortify decisions like Roe v. Wade. The confirmation processes of recent Supreme Court nominees have thus been contentious and highly politicized, as senators endeavor to ascertain how these judges might rule on future abortion-related cases. Elections can dramatically alter the abortion policy landscape. When one party gains control of the White House and Congress, the resulting shift in power can lead to profound changes in federal abortion policies and funding. For instance, the Mexico City policy, which restricts U.S. federal funding for non-governmental organizations that provide abortion services or counseling abroad, has been repeatedly rescinded and reinstated, depending on the party in power. Moreover, policy amendments such as the Hyde Amendment, which limits the use of federal funds for abortions, are subject to annual budgetary debates and reflect the prevailing political mood regarding abortion funding. Political discussions about abortion frequently involve debates over related issues, such as funding for family planning services, sex education, and access to contraception. Advocates for abortion rights argue that comprehensive sex education and accessible contraception reduce the number of unplanned pregnancies and, consequently, the need for abortions. Conversely, those opposed to abortion often favor abstinence-only education and may be skeptical of governmental involvement in contraception provision. The intertwining of these related issues further complicates the abortion debate, as policy decisions in these areas can indirectly influence abortion rates and access. Abortion policy also becomes intertwined with discussions on healthcare reform. Debates over publicly funded healthcare and insurance coverage include the question of whether and how abortion services should be covered. These policy decisions affect the accessibility and affordability of abortion for many women, thereby shaping the practical implications of the legal right to abortion. As such, healthcare legislation is closely watched by both sides of the abortion debate for its potential impact on abortion access and rights. Abortion remains a flashpoint in American political discourse because it encapsulates broad themes of the role of government, individual autonomy, moral responsibility, social justice, and public health. Politicians navigate these treacherous waters, being acutely aware that every policy position they take can have immediate and far-reaching consequences, not only concerning public opinion, but also in the lives of millions. In this political arena, even the most minute legislative adjustment or judicial interpretation has the potential to significantly alter the national landscape of abortion rights and access. This dynamic plays out continually as each political cycle introduces new leaders, legal challenges, and legislative initiatives that impact the abortion issue. The intertwining of law, personal belief, healthcare, and politics ensures that abortion remains one of the most debated and consequential issues in the United States. The political battle over abortion promises to persist as a defining feature of American public life, reflecting enduring conflicts over human rights, individual freedom, and societal values. 3.7 Gender equality and abortion access. Abortion is one of the most contentious social and political issues in the United States, and it significantly intersects with the topic of gender equality. The question of abortion access involves complex considerations of bodily autonomy, reproductive rights, and moral and ethical debates. From the perspective of gender equality, access to safe and legal abortion services is often framed as a fundamental right necessary for the equal participation of all genders in economic and social life. Supporters argue that without control over their reproductive choices, individuals, particularly women and those who can become pregnant, are at a disadvantage compared to men who do not face equivalent restrictions with respect to their bodies and future planning. Gender equality extends beyond the legal right to abortion and encompasses the practical availability of reproductive health services. Disparities in access can disproportionately affect those living in poverty, those from marginalized communities, and people living in certain geographic areas. The economic implications are significant, as an unwanted pregnancy can result in substantial costs, both direct and indirect. Direct costs include medical care during pregnancy, childbirth, and postnatal care. Indirect costs may involve loss of income, limited career opportunities, and the potential need for long-term child care. These factors can exacerbate existing inequalities and perpetuate cycles of poverty and unequal societal roles. In addition to economic aspects, the debate over abortion access and gender equality includes an assessment of health outcomes. Safe abortion procedures carry fewer risks than childbirth overall, but when access to legal abortion is restricted, individuals may resort to unsafe methods to terminate unwanted pregnancies. This can lead to serious health complications or even death, particularly in communities where medical resources are scarce. Thus, ensuring access to safe and legal abortions is also a matter of public health and aligns with the broader goal of protecting the well-being of individuals of all genders. Despite the legal status of abortion in various jurisdictions within the United States, efforts to restrict access continue to arise. These restrictions can take many forms, including mandated waiting periods, required parental consent for minors, and prohibitive costs due to a lack of insurance coverage. Legislative movements that aim to defund organizations providing abortion services or those that introduce medically unnecessary procedures work to create barriers that disproportionately affect certain populations more than others. These barriers often do not deter individuals from seeking abortions, but rather make the process more dangerous, less dignified, and more discriminatory. The role of education and information dissemination is pivotal in the discussion of abortion as it relates to gender equality. Comprehensive sex education, which includes information about contraceptive methods and family planning, is essential in preventing unwanted pregnancies and should be accessible to all. However, in many parts of the United States, such education is not adequately provided, which can lead to higher rates of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. The lack of proper education affects gender equality by potentially limiting life choices and disproportionately influencing the futures of young women and gender non-conforming individuals. Social stigmas surrounding abortion contribute to the complexity of the issue. Despite the autonomy argument, individuals who seek abortions can face judgment and marginalization, not only from the larger society, but sometimes from their communities and even their families. This stigma can discourage individuals from seeking necessary health care, delay the timing of an abortion, and intensify the emotional and psychological distress accompanying the decision. Stigma thus becomes another barrier to accessing abortion and a question of gender equality, as it places undue social and emotional burdens on those seeking reproductive health care. Balancing the moral and ethical considerations with the implications for gender equality is a challenge for policymakers and the public alike. While certain religions and moral frameworks hold views that might be in opposition to abortion, The imposition of these views on a diverse population with varying beliefs can be problematic. Gender equality implies the respect for individual choice and the recognition of diverse moral compasses. Therefore, making abortion access contingent upon a specific set of moral or religious beliefs can be seen as infringing upon the rights of those who may hold different values. The intersection of abortion and gender equality is also seen in the workplace. The ability to decide if and when to have children can have a significant impact on career development and workplace participation. Employment laws that protect against discrimination based on pregnancy are essential, but without the assurance of reproductive rights, individuals may still find themselves making difficult choices between career advancement and starting a family. Ensuring that decisions about pregnancy do not lead to inequality in employment opportunities is an ongoing challenge and an important facet of the larger conversation about abortion and gender equality. At the international level, the access to abortion as it relates to gender equality is recognized by various human rights frameworks. Global entities such as the United Nations have weighed in, acknowledging that access to reproductive health care, including abortion, is a part of the wider recognition of human rights. The international perspective can provide a comparative lens through which to examine the issue within the United States and challenge the country to consider its position relative to global standards. The future of abortion access and its connection to gender equality in the United States remains uncertain. With shifts in the political climate and legal challenges at both state and federal levels, the landscape of reproductive rights is continually evolving. It is a crucial area of public policy that requires ongoing debate, research, and advocacy. Milliseconds as well as long-form content provide short-form responses up to one paragraph, yielding answers in days of work development, will exert a significant influence on gender equality and the broader fabric of American society for years to come. 3.8 International Abortion Laws, a Comparative View. As we delve into the topic of international abortion laws, we must recognize that the legal regulations surrounding abortion are as diverse as the countries that institute them. Given the contentious nature of the subject, where deeply ingrained cultural, religious, and moral perspectives intersect with individual rights and public health policy, a wide spectrum of legislative responses can be observed worldwide. To begin with, let's examine the abortion laws in Scandinavian countries, which are often cited as being among the most liberal in the world. Countries like Sweden, Norway, and Finland allow abortion on request, generally up to week 18 of pregnancy. The process for obtaining an abortion in these countries focuses on informed consent and professionalism, ensuring that women receive comprehensive healthcare services and counseling. These laws emerge from a societal consensus that privileges individual autonomy and reproductive rights. They also spring from a public health perspective that regards access to safe abortion services as crucial for reducing the incidence of unsafe and illegal abortion practices. Moving to West Europe, we encounter slightly more restrictions, but still relatively permissive laws compared to other regions of the world. For instance, in countries like France and Germany, abortion is available mostly on request within the first trimester, with varying counseling or waiting period requirements. These countries also tend to offer broad exceptions for cases beyond the initial term, such as for fetal abnormalities or risks to the pregnant woman's health. Contrasting with the liberal policies of Europe, we can look at the abortion laws found in many countries in Latin America. Traditionally, Latin America has had some of the most restrictive abortion laws in the world, often deeply influenced by Roman Catholic doctrine. Countries such as El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras even prohibit abortion in all circumstances, which can lead to severe legal consequences for women seeking to terminate unwanted pregnancies. However, there's a slow but observable shift occurring. For example, Argentina legalized elective abortion up to the 14th week of pregnancy in late 2020, showcasing a significant change in public policy. In Africa, the patchwork of abortion laws reflects the continent's diverse cultural and religious landscapes. In some countries like South Africa, abortion is legal and available on request, but in others, such as Egypt or Nigeria, it is heavily restricted or only legal to save the woman's life. There are several African nations where unsafe abortions constitute a significant public health challenge due to restricted access to safe services. Here, too, there are movements advocating for change, driven by the need to address the high rates of maternal mortality associated with unsafe abortions. Turning to Asia, the landscape varies greatly, from highly restrictive to relatively permissive regimes. For instance, China's policies are permissive, allowing abortion without restriction as to reason, which has historically been linked to the country's family planning policies. On the other hand, the Philippines stands out for its total ban on abortions, with no exceptions even for rape, incest, or to save the life of the woman, driven by the country's dominant Roman Catholic influence. In the Middle East, abortion laws are mostly restrictive due to the influence of Islamic law, which generally permits abortion only if the pregnancy threatens the woman's life. However, there are exceptions. For instance, in Turkey, abortion is legal on request up to week 10, and in Israel, the law allows abortion under certain conditions, including if the woman is unmarried or the fetus has a serious anomaly. The United States presents a unique case study with its federal system, allowing individual states significant leeway in regulating abortion. The landmark Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade in 1973 established the constitutional right to abortion, but subsequent decisions have permitted states to impose restrictions, especially after the first trimester of pregnancy. This has resulted in a wide diversity of abortion laws across the country, ranging from states with liberal access to states with very restrictive laws that pose substantial obstacles to obtaining an abortion. Comparatively, in Canada, abortion is legal at all stages of pregnancy and is governed by the Canada Health Act. While there are no legal restrictions, the accessibility of abortion services can vary depending on the province or territory, and rural areas in particular may have limited availability of services. Australia's abortion laws are primarily the jurisdiction of individual states and territories, rather than the federal government. Over the past few decades, there has been a trend towards liberalization, with most parts of the country reforming their laws to allow for abortion on request or under broad criteria. In the international landscape, it is clear that the more liberal approaches towards abortion often coincide with higher indicators of human development, such as gender equality, education levels, and access to healthcare. This may suggest that societies which support a woman's right to choose are also more likely to support comprehensive public health measures and education. The differences in international abortion laws also highlight the complexity of balancing respect for life, personal autonomy, and societal values. The policies that govern abortion access can have profound implications on the health and socioeconomic circumstances of women, as well as ripple effects through families and communities. This comparative view of abortion laws around the world illustrates not only the wide range of policies, but also the dynamic nature of this global debate, as countries continue to grapple with what constitutes ethical, responsible, and equitable legislation. 3.9 Social movements, pro-life versus pro-choice. Abortion has long stood as one of the most divisive issues in the United States, bringing forth passionate advocacy and fervent opposition. Social movements anchored on opposing ends of the spectrum, pro-life and pro-choice, have evolved significantly over time, with their actions and rhetoric shaping public opinion and influencing legislative outcomes. The pro-life movement, which advocates against the practice of abortion, posits that life begins at conception and that unborn fetuses have a right to life. This conviction forms the foundation of their argument that abortion is morally wrong and should be legally prohibited or restricted. Rooted in a variety of ethical, religious, and philosophical perspectives, the pro-life stance does not represent a monolithic belief system, but rather encompasses a range of opinions on the circumstances under which abortion might be justified, if at all. Pro-life organizations exert considerable effort towards their goals through educational campaigns, lobbying for restrictive legislation, and providing support services for pregnant women as alternatives to abortion. Their activities are visible in multiple arenas, including peaceful protests, prayer vigils outside abortion clinics, and political action committees that endorse candidates sympathetic to their cause. Legal challenges against abortion providing organizations and advocacy for Supreme Court justices who may be amenable to overturning or undermining landmark decisions like Roe v. Wade have also been a part of their long-term strategy. Nevertheless, the movement has faced criticism for tactics perceived as aggressive or intrusive, and its association with rare but high-profile acts of violence against abortion providers has sparked a contentious debate about the boundaries of protest. Conversely, the pro-choice movement defends the position that a woman's right to choose what happens to her body is paramount. Advocates stress the importance of reproductive freedom, which includes the right to access safe and legal abortions. The movement is rooted in the broader context of women's rights and bodily autonomy, arguing that the ability to make reproductive choices is central to gender equality. Pro-choice organizations engage in their own set of activities, such as educational efforts aimed at destigmatizing abortion, providing resources and support to individuals seeking abortions, and fighting to uphold legal protections for abortion access. The movement often highlights the personal and socioeconomic factors that influence a woman's decision to have an abortion, emphasizing the need for comprehensive reproductive health care and the intersection of abortion rights with issues of poverty, race, and healthcare access. The pro-choice movement's advocacy extends to the courts and the political sphere, where it supports the preservation and expansion of abortion rights through favorable judicial appointments and the election of pro-choice politicians. Litigation to block restrictive abortion laws and efforts to pass legislation that safeguards access to reproductive health care, including insurance coverage for abortion, are common activities. However, the movement faces opposition from those who believe it overemphasizes the right to abortion at the expense of the potential life of the fetus, and it is frequently challenged on moral and ethical grounds. The political climate surrounding abortion issues is marked by fluctuating public opinion and legislative changes that can sway in favor of one movement or the other. The composition of the Supreme Court, alterations in federal and state laws, and the shifting dynamics of political parties all play a significant role in determining the directions these movements take and the tactics they employ. In recent years, advancements in medical technology and changes in societal attitudes towards sexuality and family planning have also impacted the conversation, offering new perspectives and challenges for both pro-life and pro-choice advocates. Another key aspect of the abortion debate involves the role of religion and its influence on the perspectives of many individuals and policymakers. Certain religious traditions hold strong views on the sanctity of life from conception, thereby bolstering the pro-life movement with a moral framework that guides its actions. On the other side, religious perspectives that prioritize individual conscience and the complex reality of women's lives contribute to the pro-choice narrative. This interconnection between religious belief and abortion rights results in a heightened emotional intensity within the debate, as opposing sides often view their stance as not only politically but also spiritually imperative. The public discourse surrounding abortion is further complicated by differing interpretations of constitutional rights. Pro-life advocates argue that the right to life should extend to the unborn, making abortion an infringement upon that right. In contrast, pro-choice supporters assert that the Constitution's guarantee of liberty and privacy includes a woman's decision to terminate a pregnancy. The Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade in 1973 was a landmark ruling that legalized abortion nationwide, setting a legal precedent based on the right to privacy but allowing for state regulation in certain stages of pregnancy. This decision has served as both a rallying call for pro-choice activists and a target for pro-life efforts, symbolizing the entrenched legal battle lines that have been drawn. Efforts by social movements to sway public opinion are advanced through various means, including media campaigns, educational outreach, and community involvement. Pro-life and pro-choice organizations both invest in public relations efforts to frame their message in persuasive ways, aiming to recruit supporters, influence undecided individuals, and marginalize the opposing viewpoint. Social media has become a key battleground in this respect, providing a platform for both grassroots engagement and coordinated campaigns that aim to reach a wider audience with viral content that can shift perceptions on a large scale. One of the most pressing concerns in the abortion debate is the issue of access. Even where abortion is legal, geographical, financial, and legal barriers can hinder individuals from obtaining the procedure. Pro-life advocates may view these barriers as deterrents that protect potential life, while pro-choice supporters argue that they unfairly target the most vulnerable populations, including lower-income individuals and minorities. This emphasizes the role that socioeconomic status plays in the abortion debate, with access and affordability being cornerstones of reproductive justice. The future of the abortion debate in the United States is uncertain. Changes in the makeup of the Supreme Court, shifts in public opinion, and alterations in the political landscape all hold the potential to redefine the terms of the debate. With each side deeply entrenched in their beliefs and willing to fight tirelessly for their cause, the issue remains a major fault line in the cultural and political fabric of the nation. While it is important to consider the fervency and dedication of the individuals involved in these social movements, it is equally vital to recognize that many Americans find themselves somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. Not everyone aligns strictly with the pro-life or pro-choice label. There are those who believe in restrictions on abortion, but also recognize scenarios where it may be necessary, and others who generally support abortion rights but struggle with moral reservations about its broader implications. The range of opinions on abortion reflects the complexity of the issue at its core, an issue that encompasses questions of rights, ethics, health, religion, and the role of government. It is within this tumultuous landscape that pro-life and pro-choice social movements continue to operate, each pushing for a societal consensus that aligns with their worldview. Despite the deep polarization, some efforts at dialogue and understanding across the divide do exist, suggesting that common ground may be found in shared goals like reducing the need for abortion through better access to contraception and comprehensive sex education. Whether such commonalities can bridge the vast ideological divide remains to be seen, but they present a starting point for potential cooperation in a deeply fractured debate. The conversation on abortion continues to evolve as legal challenges arise, technological advancements are made, and societal norms shift. Social movements advocating for pro-life and pro-choice positions are not static. They respond to these changes and adapt their strategies accordingly. The landscape is influenced by a multitude of factors, including judicial decisions, the availability of medical information, and the impact of international movements on American soil. As such, the contest between pro-life and pro-choice will likely continue to be a defining aspect of social politics in the United States for years to come. 3.10 Media representation and public perception of abortion. Media representation of abortion has a profound impact on public perception. Abortion coverage in news outlets, television shows, movies, and social media often frames the manner in which the public discusses and understands this contentious issue. Typically, the manner in which abortion is presented in the media correlates strongly with particular political or ideological slants, contributing to the polarization surrounding the topic. The choice of language, the stories that are highlighted, and the voices that are amplified or suppressed in the media contribute to shaping public opinion and policy. In the context of news coverage, conservative media outlets often focus on the moral and ethical considerations related to abortion, frequently highlighting the views of pro-life advocates. Emphasis is often placed on the potential humanity of unborn fetuses, discussions on when life begins, and the rights of the unborn. Through the use of emotive language and testimonials from individuals who regret having had abortions, or from activists who frame abortion as a harm to society, conservative media skews public perception towards opposition to abortion rights. Conversely, liberal media outlets are more likely to frame the issue of abortion within the context of women's rights, reproductive health, and personal freedom. These platforms typically highlight the importance of maintaining access to safe and legal abortion services, the defense of Roe v. Wade, the landmark Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion nationwide in 1973, and the implications of legislative restrictions on abortion. By focusing on the autonomy of women and the health risks associated with limiting access to abortion services, liberal media tends to drive public perception towards supporting the right to choose. The impact of entertainment media, including film and television, cannot be underestimated in its role in shaping perceptions. When abortion is depicted on screen, the narrative often follows a predictable arc that reflects societal attitudes and prejudices. Frequently, characters who opt for an abortion are portrayed as conflicted or suffering consequences, which can reinforce the stigma associated with the procedure. Conversely, when depictions are of women who confidently and unapologetically choose abortion, it challenges prevailing taboos and provides a counter-narrative that underscores the notion of choice and agency. Similarly, on social media, the spread of both accurate information and misinformation is rampant. The interactive nature of these platforms allows for a multitude of voices to contribute to the discourse on abortion. In the contemporary era, social media campaigns and hashtags, such as #ShoutYourAbortion, work to normalize the conversation about abortion and seek to reduce stigma. On the other hand, social media can also be a vector for anti-abortion groups to organize and disseminate graphic content intended to shock and dissuade individuals from supporting abortion rights. The language used to discuss abortion is also a significant factor in shaping public perception. Terms like pro-life and pro-choice serve not only as descriptors for one's stance on the issue, but also as rhetorical tools that carry with them implicit judgments and values. The use of the term pro-life, for example, implies that the opposing viewpoint is anti-life, which may villainize those who are pro-choice. Alternatively, the term pro-choice emphasizes the element of personal decision, potentially marginalizing the moral concerns of those who are against abortion. Another important component of media representation is the attention given to legislation and political developments related to abortion. When significant legal battles or policy decisions are portrayed as high-stakes dramas, they can mobilize public opinion and activism on either side of the debate. The passage of restrictive abortion laws in various states and the media portrayal of these actions underscores a narrative of an ongoing battle for control over women's bodies and rights, energizing political bases and affecting voter turnout. The media often frames the abortion debate as a binary decision between two opposing sides, neglecting the nuances and complexities of individual cases. This simplified depiction can hinder a comprehensive understanding of the issue and may result in individuals adhering to rigid positions without recognizing the spectrum of experiences and viewpoints that exist. The reality of abortion is that it encompasses a wide range of scenarios, including considerations of health, socioeconomic status, and personal circumstances that are not always conveyed in media representations. Amplification of extreme positions in media can have the unintended effect of marginalizing moderate voices and perspectives. While more polarized views tend to attract attention and elicit stronger reactions, they do not necessarily represent the full range of opinions held by the public. The lack of attention to moderate or less absolutist points of view can contribute to the perception that society is more divided on the issue than it actually is. This can discourage open dialogue and understanding, essential components for finding common ground. Moreover, media coverage rarely delves into the lived experiences of individuals who have had abortions beyond one-dimensional narratives. The diverse reasons for seeking an abortion, the emotional and physical experiences involved, and the long-term impact on individuals' lives are often glossed over. By not examining these stories in depth or ignoring them entirely, the media fails to provide a comprehensive view of abortion as a personal and societal issue. It is only through the telling of these varied stories that a more empathetic and enlightened conversation can emerge. In summary, the representation of abortion in the media is complex and influential. It both shapes and reflects broader societal attitudes, and can either entrench existing divisions or promote understanding. For those interested in the public perception of abortion, a critical analysis of media representation is necessary, considering not just what is being shown and told, but what is omitted and why. As the media continues to play a central role in cultural and political discourse, its treatment of abortion remains a crucial factor in the ongoing debate over reproductive rights and justice.